I'm Jason Murray with eBOSS Canada, and I'm sitting down with Cameron Bailey, the Artistic Director of TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival. Thank you again, Cameron, for taking time out of your day to answer 10 questions.
My pleasure, Jason.
So let's jump right in.
Sure.
So the first question that we typically ask guests is a question around their unique journey. I mean, in life, we have to make decisions every day. I mean, even your decision to sit down with us is a small decision, but one that you yourself made. So when you think about this question in the context of your career, what are some of the decisions that you made along the way to get to where you are today? Is there anything you can share about that?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that not all the decisions that got me to where I am today were mine.
Yeah.
My parents made the decision when I was just 8 years old to bring me and my sister from Barbados to Canada. That completely changed our lives. And, you know, all the way along, in addition to decisions that I was making, I was being helped by parents, by family, by teachers, that kind of thing. I liked school, so I chose to read and to study and to try to do as best as I could in school. I wanted to study literature, actually, and that's what I studied in my undergrad years at Western University. But at a certain point, I took a film course, a choice, and that also changed my life. And I got really interested, really passionate about cinema. I learned as much as I could. I went on and did some grad work in cinema at York University.
Wow.
And then I began to look for jobs. And I liked writing and I liked movies, so I started writing about movies. I chose to become a film critic. And probably one of the biggest choices I made was early in my career as a film critic. I was approached by TIFF, it was then called the Festival of Festivals.
Right.
And I was asked to come on board as a programmer, one of the people who selects the films, in this case the Canadian films. And I said no. I actually chose that first time to say no. I didn't think I was qualified, I didn't think I was ready, and I chose no. Strangely enough, they came back the following year and asked me again, and that time I was maybe a little bit smarter.
Okay.
And I said yes that time.
You had a second chance.
And then, yeah, exactly. So
Right.
from that point on, I was working as both a film critic and a programmer, and that's kind of what led me to where I am now.
Wow, terrific. And when I think about your job, I must say, I've interviewed a couple people now, and yours is a very exciting one. I mean, you get to meet the biggest stars, you know, all around the world. So when you think about what makes your job particularly exciting, what is something that you think is exciting about being the artistic director for TIFF?
You know, it's not actually meeting famous people.
Right.
That is a part of the job sometimes, but it's work. It's not like you're meeting them and you're hanging out and going
Right.
for dinner or anything most
Yeah.
of the time. It's really, you know, they're there to do a job, to present their films, and I'm there to help them do that and to launch new work into the world. So that's really what it is. For me, the exciting part is introducing new films to audiences. We often, as programmers, watch films on our own, in little rooms, by ourselves, and we have a personal experience with that film. It's just one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then, months later, if we invite the film to the festival, we're standing up in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, and presenting that same film to an audience, and hoping that they share that private, personal experience that we had. And that, I think, is the most exciting part, that to be able to feel something from a work of art and then hope that you can share that feeling with a lot of people.
Yeah, you know, you're giving me this imagery around being that person in that room watching the film and discerning whether or not it's going to be something that's going to be added to the festival. So I guess it's a good segue into the next question, and that's a question around what are some of the tasks that you are working on a year before the big festival, TIFF, every September. Are there any tasks that you can share with us that you're up to, you know, at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big event, and it requires a lot of work and a lot of people to make it happen. We have at TIFF right now full-time staff of about 200 people. Not all of them work on the festival, but most of them do it one way or another, because we also do a lot of year-round programming. We're programming films all across Canada. We're doing a lot of different things. The festival itself, though, is a more than year-round activity. So we are tracking films now that will not be completed until 2016, a year later. But in terms of this year, what we're doing is mapping out all of the groundwork, the logistics, the foundation of what the festival will be, which venues will be in, and on which days, what the teams will be for that, what the programming lineup is going to look like, what the sections are going to be, how big the festival is. We have a team of about 18 programmers, so who's going to be selecting what, who goes to which part of the world when, to find films. All of that logistical work has to be done very, very early. And then we start to look at films around now, actually, around around 8-9 months out from the festival.
Right.
And we slowly begin to ramp that up. So right now we're not watching that many. I think I've got maybe 2 or 3 films this week to look at.
Right.
But by the time we get to April or May, we are watching dozens and dozens of films every week. So it is a kind of a serious ramp up to that.
Right, right. You know, I think about the social media world that we're in today. How has social media changed the game for TIFF?
You know, I think what social media has done to an event like TIFF, but to all of us really, is it's brought a lot of different voices into the mix. It's in a way democratized taste, democratized judgment. So, you know, when I started out as a film critic and a programmer, my job was to be the expert and to tell you what a good movie was.
Right.
Now, everybody's got their own
Everybody
opinions
has their opinion.
about what a good movie is, right?
Yeah.
So, what we try to do is select what we think are the best, most interesting films of the year, bring them to Toronto, and then we use social media to engage our audience. We want to know what they think. We want to know what each person's individual opinion is. We want our audience to be talking to each other as much as us talking to them, and I think that's really the advantage of social media.
You know, this is another good segue into my next question. So TIFF has grown so much over the years. And anytime I think about an organization's growth, there are critical moments that happen in its growth, from its inception that is, that really allow for it to grow. You know, so when you think about TIFF all these years, are there two instances that were game changers? Perhaps it was a certain celebrity that made an appearance. Perhaps it was social media. But are there 2 elements that you think in the trajectory of TIFF stand out as game changers?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I would say is that TIFF started with grand ambitions.
Right.
Our founders, 3 men who were from Toronto, would go to the Cannes Film Festival every year. That was seen as the best festival, most prestigious festival in the world. And they came back with the idea of doing something as grand, as big, as prestigious in Toronto. That was big thinking at the time, because there was nothing going on like that. So that was, I think, a first critical decision. But the festival grew from 1976, our first year, onward. In 1990, there was a real turning point when we took on the activities of the Cinematheque Ontario. And that had been a previous institution based up at the Ontario Science Centre. We took on their library, we took on their screening series. We began to show films not just during September, during the festival, but all year round.
Right.
And to try to bring the best of art house cinema to this city, that changed things as well.
Right.
And then I think the next turning point, and probably the most substantial one so far, was the opening almost 5 years ago now of TIFF Bell Lightbox.
Right.
This was a plan that our CEO Piers Handling and others had, and it took 8 to 10 years to actually get it from the initial conception to opening the doors, cutting that ribbon, and walking in and realizing that we now had a home. We had a center, a foundation for all of our activities right here, where we could show films all year round, we could have events all year round. Lots of other festivals come in, the Hot Dogs Festival, Inside Out, many others are using this building in addition to what we do. And we have our offices here, we can show exhibitions, we just finished the Kubrick exhibition. So suddenly it's a much different organization, it's a much bigger organization. In the almost 5 years since we've opened, our staff has more than doubled, the size of our budget has almost doubled. So we've essentially become an organization that's twice as big as it used to be before the building.
Right. Infrastructure development is always a challenge, so it's great to see that, like you said, we have a home. TIFF is here, which is where we are right now for this interview. So in terms of challenges, I mean, TIFF is a huge, huge festival. So what are some challenges linked to your job as artistic director?
You know, I think one of the biggest challenges is staying relevant. We, at the festival, are presenting what we consider to be the most significant films of the year, each year. But how that's judged changes. You know, new things come up. There are different filmmakers, there are different countries that suddenly become important in the film world. In the late 80s and early 90s, Iran suddenly became a very important country. There were really interesting films coming out of Iran. Certain parts of East Asia have now become very significant film countries. We just did a spotlight on South Korea. last year at the festival. So that's become a new important area for the international film industry. Television has suddenly changed, and suddenly there's a blurred line, a very blurred line between what's a movie and what's TV. Some of the most important movie directors are now working in television. You know, David Fincher with House of Cards, or Steven Soderbergh with the Nick, and so many others. So, you know, when I started doing this, TV was something off to the side. We didn't even think about TV if you were working in film, but now it's all interwoven. So these changes continue to happen, and the challenge is to remain relevant, to stay on top of those changes, and to kind of ride that wave.
Right. Now, when you think about the behind-the-scenes technicalities, I mean, it's always nice for people to see the finished product, but there's so much going on behind the scenes. I mean, you know, whether it's being in conversation with venues, obviously there's a stage where there are volunteers coming into the fore. There are just so many different things going on behind the scenes. Can you paint a picture of what behind the scenes looks like at TIFF, maybe, you know, in the few weeks leading up to the festival?
Sure. So we have a full-time year-round staff of 200.
Right.
During the months leading up to the festival, that grows, bringing on seasonal staff to roughly about 600 people working here, and we have 3,000 volunteers on top of that. So the team really grows over the course of the spring and summer. And you know, last year, for instance, we closed down King Street in front of our building and the part between University Avenue and Peter Street, and made it Festival Street. We did that for the first time, and we had all kinds of activities going on. We had a music stage and performances, and we had, you know, performers and all kinds of things on the street. Doing something like that was an enormous logistical challenge. We have to think about, you know, traffic routing. We have to think about, you know, waste pickup and recycling on the street. We have to think about, you know, when people flow. Where are people going to come in? Where are they going to exit? What times are different events going to be happening on the street? That's just one example of the logistical challenges. And we're doing that in about 22 venues around the festival during the 11 days.
Wow. So, you know, you bring up the fact that you closed down the street. You also brought up earlier in the interview about the fact that you now have this home, this space. So there has been lots of growth. What, if you can share with us, what are some of the things on the horizon? Is there anything that we can expect as lovers of TIFF that you guys have in the works?
Sure. I mean, we've got lots of big hopes, big dreams. One of the things I'm also responsible for, in addition to the September Festival, is something called the Canada's Top 10 Film Festival. That happens every January and through the winter. Starts in Toronto here at the TIFF Bell Light Box and runs for 10 days, and then we take it out across the country. I just come back from Vancouver, where we were doing Canada's Top 10, showing the 10 best features and shorts of the year from Canada, and then we also did an onstage conversation where I sat down with Sandra Oh. Now that she's done with Grey's Anatomy, she has the time to come back to Canada. She's working on a new independent film here. So that was new for us in Vancouver. So one of our dreams is to expand that, to make Top 10 a big national program. There are even some thoughts about taking it international as well, because we've had a lot of interest and just questions about, you know, how can we see more interesting Canadian work in places like China and Korea, the US, all kinds of places. So that's one of the things we want to do. We're also trying to get further into the online world, the digital world, like I think everybody is. We want people to come into TIFF Bell Light Box, but we want also to be able to go out and reach them wherever they are on their little mobile devices that we're all carrying around now. So we're looking at some things to do that too.
So in your view, what can we do as Canadians to help the arts and entertainment industry in Canada grow?
And I think the most important thing is to just dive into the work that's being made. We have some terrific artists here in this country. Filmmakers, writers, musicians, performing artists, dancers, you know, in every single arts discipline, there are just top of the line creators working in this country. Sometimes they have to leave the country to become successful, and it's a small population, so I understand that. But I think one of the first things you can do is watch Canadian films. They're widely available here at TIFF and elsewhere as well. Get to know some of the artists, and don't wait till they become famous. Try to find them out before they become big. People like Denis Villeneuve, who's now working with Jake Gyllenhaal and some big actors on movies. He's been bringing his films to our festival for years, and maybe people didn't know about him. Now they know about him. Right? And Jean-Marc Vallée, who directed the Dallas Buyers Club, 2 of those actors won Oscars last year.
Right.
But he brought his first film to 15 years beforehand. So if you can just follow your curiosity, and not just in film but in every art form, I think you can find that there are just top-notch Canadian artists working everywhere.
We all have mentors. So my next question is about mentors. Who are the people in your life that have inspired you, that have kept you going, that given you the drive to pursue everything that you've been up to? Anyone that you can name?
I can't say I've had a lot of professional mentors, but I have had people in my personal life who've been inspiring to me. Beginning most directly with my family, my mother and father both, really instilling, I think, the values that lead to wanting to do more, wanting to achieve as much as you can and contribute as much as you can. I had that from birth, essentially.
Right.
My sister, who also works at TIFF, by the way, she's my older sister, 4 years older. She's been a formative influence as well. But I've had some friends as well. I've got some filmmaker friends who encouraged me to try to do more. I was a programmer here for many years, and that was a great job, and I was very happy to be doing it. But then over the years, I had friends say, well, is there more that you could do at TIFF? If an opportunity came up, what would you do? How would you respond to that? And so when an opportunity did come up to become the artistic director, I had those friends kind of just nudging me, saying, you should take that. You can do something with it.
Right. Cameron, I really have to thank you. Believe it or not, you just answered 10 questions. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface
That was
here.
fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
thank you again. Everything that you have to say is really going to help people watching with their own careers. And that's what we're all about. We really want to make sure that we are speaking to people who are at the peak of their careers and help people on their way.
Thank you.
So thank you again.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
This segment of 10 Questions has been brought to you by 10 Questions is presented by eBOSS Canada.